Thank you for joining us. My name is Lisa Hart. Perimenopause and menopause are an inevitable occurrence that every woman will experience. However, each woman will experience different symptoms. Today I am joined by Dr. Garrett, who is with the Orange County offices of Kaiser Permanente, and she's an OBGYN. And then we also have Beth Haney, who has a doctorate in nursing practices, nurse practitioner, and she's the president of Lux Aesthetic Center. Thank you both for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
So obviously we're talking about a subject that just about every woman in our community is going to go through. Let's talk a little bit about what menopause is, or start with perimenopause because that leads up to it. I'll start with you.
So menopause is actually a retrospective diagnosis. It isn't until you've had no period for 1 full year that we say, you're in menopause.
Okay.
And on average, it occurs at about age 51.2. Now, the perimenopause is that time period that leads up to that, on average, starting around age 47, can last as long as 4 to 10 years. And what we think about when we think about menopause and perimenopause is that menopause is when the ovaries have stopped making the majority of their hormones.
Okay.
The perimenopause is that time period where the ovaries are actually sputtering, so to speak. So every day it can be different. And unfortunately, that is what is the consequence. We see all these weird symptoms that none of us really enjoy.
Right.
Every day, about 6,000 women enter the menopause.
Every day.
Every day.
Well, there's a lot of women. I mean, I do find that there's more women in our community than there are men. And so I feel like we're definitely speaking, to the right group. Let's talk a little bit about, we'll talk about symptoms in just a minute. There's a women's health initiative that had happened some time ago, and I know you both are quite familiar with that. Let's talk a little bit about the movement and sort of what happened and what were some of the things that we learned from it.
So the Women's Health Initiative was a very large study. It involved a little over 27,000 women across the United States. Over 40 centers participated. And they started enrolling in about 1993. The idea was no one had done a randomized prospective study to see benefits versus the risks of hormone replacement therapy. So this study was embarked upon, and I don't think we'll ever see another one like it. And we have some significant learnings from it, but we also had some misinformation that got passed.
Okay.
It consisted of 4 arms. On one set, it was women who had had a hysterectomy. Their uterus had been removed for whatever reason, so they only needed to take an estrogen. And so they were taking estrogen by itself. And they were actually using, at the time, the most popular product on the market was a conjugated equine, horse-derived natural product, estrogen. And then the cohort of women that were parallel to them were the ones on no hormone. The second arm set were women that had a uterus in place. So they are required to take not just an estrogen for their symptoms, they need to take the progestin component to help prevent cancer of the uterus.
Okay.
So they were also using a very similar product, the most popular product on the market at the time, but in a combination of an equine estrogen with a synthetic progestin versus women that were on nothing. And these women, the primary endpoints were looking at breast cancer and cardiovascular changes, because women primarily die of heart disease. And the idea was to see what does estrogen do or not do, because there was a lot of misperception out there. Now, the average age of these women was 63, which is an important factor to understand, because the argument and one of the criticisms of that study was that the women were actually on the older side of the menopause and may not have really needed hormones to begin with. So how can we really apply that knowledge to today's woman? And the study released its first set of data in 2002, and subsequently a black box got put on any estrogen-containing product, do not use. It got stopped a little early, the arm that had the estrogen and progestin, because those women were showing a slight increased risk for breast cancer. And at about 7.5 years, or a year and a half later, they stopped the other arm, concerned about potential for risk, although none were really documented. Now fast forward to 2017, and you look at now, we're at about 21 years, but in 2017, we say that the Women's Health Initiative turned 18.
Oh, funny.
And there was a look back, and the reality was, when we looked back at all those women, there was no increased risk for breast cancer, for cardiovascular disease or consequences, or from mortality from any other cause.
Right. Wow. Wow.
So that was the big finding.
Now, I know you taught at UCI. Tell me a little about your history there and what this initiative might have meant to your teachings.
Well, at UCI, I was in the nurse practitioner graduate program. And so when we taught about menopause, of course, the WHI study was brought up because there was so much confusion about it. Because, like you were saying, it was some misinformation was out there, and so people were really afraid. And we were discussing things about the symptoms of menopause and how troublesome it is for women in their daily lives. And so I had to actually go over the same information that was just spoken about, and just kind of present the facts and what kind of options there are for women, because there's plenty of options now that we know. So.
Right. Well, the study was done so long ago, so I'm wondering, I mean, I actually had not heard of this study, so I'm wondering how many people don't know about it. And is it really important for them to even know? I mean, obviously you have to, because I would imagine people may ask about it, so they might have to know, going forward.
Of course. Well, a lot of my patients, when they come in, they're in for different reasons, but they would always say, I'm having these terrible hot flashes, I can't sleep at night, but I don't want to take any hormone replacement therapy because it causes cancer. So you have to educate them.
Okay.
And there was really actually a significant learning. And just in 2017, the North American Menopause Society came out with a new position statement. They are one of the gurus when we talk about hormone replacement therapy and the menopause. But what it validated was that use of hormone replacement therapy in the first 10 years of menopause, this is called the timing theory,
Right.
actually may decrease the risk for dementia and may actually provide a lot of health benefits.
I see.
But in the second 10 years of menopause, probably the risks associated with hormone replacement therapy, in particular with estrogens and their blood clotting effect, that those risks probably in many cases may outweigh the benefits.
Gotcha.
Now I say may because this is individualized therapy.
Right.
And the key, when I'm sure Beth feels the same way, when we talk to patients, it's really everyone's an individual. And depending on how the symptoms are affecting one's quality of life is going to dictate the risks versus the benefits.
Right, exactly. And when we come back, we will definitely talk a little bit more about the hormone replacement or hormone therapy and bioidentical therapies that are out there. But before we go into that, let's talk a little about some of the symptoms and the changes that we would most likely see once menopause occurs. So for instance, Beth, you have some slides that you brought that show the difference between the fat loss and then the bone loss in the facial area. So let's take a look at the fat loss first.
So as you can see, these three images, there's age 35, 45, and 55. And in the face, we lose significant amounts of fat, but it also gets redistributed. For example, you can get more fat underneath the eye, and it gives you the bulging under the eye. You can also get a little bit more in the jowling, in the jowl area or jawline. And so just as we age, it's just a naturally occurring process that happens, and we start losing a little bit of the fat under there. So our face starts flattening and maybe falling a little bit.
Okay.
As far as the bone also, we suffer from bone loss at the same time. So we're losing fat, the muscles start getting a little more soft, the skin becomes more lax, and the bone that's actually supporting those structures becomes thinner and starts receding a bit, so the jaw starts moving back, the cheekbone starts flattening, and around the eye, although it's subtle, around the eye you can see that the opening starts getting a little bit larger, and so that causes the circles under there. And so now not only are you going through menopause or perimenopause, but now you're seeing these changes in your face.
Yeah.
And it can be distressing for some women.
Absolutely.
And the first 5 years of menopause, we actually can lose about 30% of the collagen matrix. So all of the good support in our skin. And that includes we're losing the elastin fibers, in addition to the fat and then the bone. So the combination, unfortunately, is wrinkles.
Oh, right.
And then
darn.
sun exposure, smoking, genetics, that all then plays on top of this and with this.
Exactly.
Sun exposure is really a big one because that's the UV radiation from the sun, and people don't realize that, oh, they're like, oh, I love how the sun feels and it's so warm and beautiful, but it's actually UV radiation that they're getting. And so if you look at your skin under your arm here, this is what your skin would look like if you don't really have much sun exposure during your lifetime.
I'm never going to look at that part of my body because I already know. And she tells me often, you're getting too much sun. You're getting, but there's so many people who are active in this in California.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And it's so hard to. I put sunscreen on all the time. So we'll talk a little bit about some of those treatments right after the break, and then we'll also talk about the hormone replacement therapy.
Perfect.
So when we come back, we will be talking about those items. So stay with us.
Ernest Hemingway wrote The Old Man and the Sea at 52. Satchel Paige was still dominating batters at 59. Celia Cruz was still winning Grammys at 77. John Wheeler illuminated our ideas of the universe at 70. And Roger Crouch was 56 when he first went into space. Your best is yet to come.
Welcome back. Hormone therapy and bioidentical therapy are two options that you can choose when you're going through menopause. But also, there are skin treatments that Beth is going to talk about as well, in which you can choose to do. So we'll start with you because we know that you are very involved with hormone therapy and the bioidentical stuff, which we were talking a little bit off camera. I know it's a huge subject, so we'll just keep it kind of simple, just so people can kind of understand the options that are available to them.
Absolutely. So what we're trying to do, the goal of our therapy is all about replacing what is no longer necessarily being made, or at least in the same quantity. So the primary hormones we're referring to are estrogens and progestins. Now, if you've had your uterus removed, the role of a progestin is very limited. We really only use a progestin when we talk about hormone therapy, when we're trying to protect the uterus against the ill effects of estrogen.
Right, okay.
Okay, so if you don't have a uterus, you're just talking about estrogen. And when we talk about hormone replacement therapy, it's about giving these things back. And they can come back in various forms. The estrogen can be given in shots, in pills, in creams. They all work very well. Estrogen is one of those hormones that can be absorbed well.
Okay.
Progestins, on the other hand, remember, we're only using that to protect the uterus against cancer. And the studies have shown that you do not get predictable systemic levels of hormone if you're doing it through your skin. Okay, and we sometimes, a lot of the products that are marketed, anything through the skin, remember, is a supplement, doesn't have FDA regulation. Different kinds of regulatory bodies are looking at that. It is not necessarily doing what it's supposed to do to protect our uterus against cancer. So if we're taking estrogen, we have a uterus, we need an oral progestin.
Gotcha.
Now, the concept of bioidentical, it's actually very interesting. Bioidentical is actually probably more a marketing term. But if you were to ask a scientist or someone in the endocrine society, what does bioidentical mean? It refers to a product that is structurally, on a molecular level, and biochemically identical to what our body would make.
Okay.
So in the estrogen world, we make 3 estrogens. We call them E1, E2, E3, just to be simple. It's primarily E2, or estradiol, that we talk about for symptom management. So those products are available, FDA approved, as well as non-FDA.
Okay.
But natural is not always bioidentical.
I see.
And we alluded to that earlier with the Women's Health Initiative.
Right.
That a very natural product. The brand was Premarin, but it was from pregnant horse's urine.
Right.
As natural as it comes.
Yep.
But it is not equivalent to the estrogen that we as humans make.
Right.
So not bioidentical. Bioidentical progestins are also available. They are a bit more expensive than the synthetic products that are out there, but there may be some benefits in terms of a little lower risk of breast cancer and more cardiac friendly. They also have a nice sedative quality.
Okay.
So my patients who need the progestin and are on it and can take it, they'll use it at night to help them with some of the sleep disturbance. It's a lovely option. But these are all, like I said, individualized decisions.
Well, right. And so let's talk about some of the symptoms. I know we went into it a little bit, but what are I guess you could say, or like, what are the top 3 symptoms that most women complain about with menopause? And you can hear from both of you. Which are
80% of women have hot flashes.
Okay. And is that only at night or is that all day?
It could be all day long.
Oh.
Yeah, and then of course, I mean, I'll give you my three that my opinion is hot flashes, sleep disturbance,
Right.
and with that come all the mood and cognition issues.
I see.
Okay, and then probably sexual changes, dryness with intercourse, more difficulty achieving orgasm.
Okay. All right. How about from you? Same things?
I hear similar, except for not necessarily the mood. Instead, I see more acne. The menopausal acne.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay. So, I mean, I feel like we've been dealt kind of a crappy set of cards here.
Doesn't have to be.
Well, this
No,
is
it
right.
doesn't.
But you know what? But you said that some women choose not to do any of this. Is it because of fear or because they just don't feel they need it?
Both. I think that the mantra, like any medication, is if you have a quality of life that is being poorly affected and you can do something about it in a safe manner, you should do it.
Right.
And so, we used to say the lowest effective dose for the shortest duration. I think now the mantra more appropriately is the appropriate dose for the appropriate length of time.
Right.
And I think that acknowledges that this is an individualized decision-making process between a patient and a physician.
Right. Well, exactly. Because I think one time when I was speaking with an OBGYN, there's different levels, like you said. Oh, you're right at your age. But what if you don't want to be right at your age? You would like to be 10 years younger age. So then what do you say to those folks?
Well, hormone testing is not something that we advocate.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yes. I mean, I talked about the sputtering of the ovary. So I do your hormone levels today.
Oh,
It's not what they are tomorrow.
I see.
And if your hormone levels come back normal and you're miserable, am I going to tell you that you cannot take hormone therapy? Absolutely not.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
hormone levels, there are some rare circumstances where they are of value. But as a general rule, they're potentially a great way to make some money.
I see.
But they are not indicated and they're not supported by the North American Menopause Society, American College of OBGYN on a routine basis.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, now let's go exterior here. You were talking about face and how we lose some bone structure, and we certainly have sagging skin, all of which I'm sure you see on a regular basis from your patients. So let's talk about some of the things that you are seeing from women who are in menopause, and then talk about some of the treatments that are available to us.
Sure. Well, I do, the majority of my patients are women. There are lots of men too, but they typically come in and say, my face is falling. Something is going on here. Plus, they complain of dryness. Their skin is very dry. And then also they come up with these pimples and they're like, I am nowhere near a adolescent. I am in menopause or perimenopause and I'm starting to get these pimples.
Okay.
And so there's lots of different treatments that you can do depending on the person, just like with hormone replacement therapy. Women have all kinds of different genetic things that would be attributing to how they're looking or
Right.
other things that might be going on with their appearance. And so some of the things that you can do is, of course, sunscreen. That's the main thing. Stay hydrated and do not smoke cigarettes or anything else. And so that's the foundation of
Right.
good skin health. But then if you get to a point where your skin is becoming very dry and it's changing, it's getting a little more crepey, there's different things that you can do to stimulate collagen. And some are not really any topical things. The only thing that topically would help is a prescription product called tretinoin or Retin-A.
Okay.
Really effective in resurfacing the skin in an exfoliative type of way. But there are side effects and things that you'd have to discuss with your provider about. That's one way to improve the skin topically. There are other treatments that you can do though too, such as the CO2 laser resurfacing treatment. And the CO2 laser resurfacing goes by many names. There's different brand names. So one of the more popular brand names is called Fraxel.
Okay.
Not that I'm advocating for that brand, but there's, we use the Dot Smart Xide at Lux.
Right.
And what that does is it resurfaces the skin, not 100% ablative, but it does treat the skin so that it stimulates collagen. And it really is, shown through skin biopsy that it does improve the collagen and elastin of the skin.
Okay.
Other ways to do it are with the intense pulse light treatment, which is not a laser, but it's a really bright light. And that treats brown spots, stimulates collagen, gets rid of some of the redness that we can get as we get a little bit older.
Okay.
And the other things too that can kind of build the face and kind of restructure the bone and put it back to where it used to be is some of the dermal fillers.
All right.
And so that just replaces some of the volume that we lose. So cheeks, jowls, temples, lips, under the eyes. There's several different areas that we can do it. And lastly, a 2015 study actually showed through skin biopsy that if you do neurotoxin, which is like the Dysport or the Botox treatments, those types of injections, that they actually stimulate collagen. And they aren't exactly sure why, but the hypothesis is that maybe it's from the muscles not moving, and it gives the skin a chance to regenerate and not cause a breakdown.
So now when you talk about the fillers, though, and you're saying that they, over time, are stimulating collagen.
Yes.
So once you've injected it, how long does it last?
So it depends. Some of the fillers can last, depending on how thick they are, because there's different thicknesses, there's different areas of the face that you would put certain ones, or that you would use certain fillers. And so they can last anywhere from 6 months to 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
And the hyaluronic acids, which is the Juvederm, Restylane, those types of fillers, the hyaluronic acids, while they're under the skin, and the same with Radius and Sculptra, they actually stimulate your own skin to make more collagen.
Wow.
So you'll see over time that you might use less of these products, and your skin just maintains the fullness. So,
Do you ever think we'll see a crossover where you could say to one of your patients, I know you have all these things, but did you know that you could also do these things? Because I don't think that really happens today, that I would go to my OBGYN and she would recommend any of those things. It's more for a medical
Well, you haven't seen me, Lisa.
Well, I have not, darn it. So you do provide that kind of information.
As I said, I think everything's individual. What bothers one woman and doesn't bother another, it's very different.
Okay.
What's fascinating is, we talk about the pimples, but that's an androgen, so a testosterone. The other hormone from the ovary. But the truth is, all the hormones are in ratios to each other.
Right.
And as we get a decline in the estrogen from ovarian production with the menopause, in those first 5 years of menopause, we actually have a relative increase in the testosterone.
Oh.
And so what happens is the pimples, the rogue hairs, the things that we don't like, you know, and even the hair loss on our head.
Sure.
And so that for the first 5 years is not unusual to have patients, especially a lot of my patients, really complain of. And so what options are out there? And unfortunately for hair, once you've stimulated a hair follicle, you really have to do electrolysis or to burn that hair follicle, to really have permanent hair loss.
Laser,
Is that something you treat as well?
Laser, laser hair reduction.
Oh, it is. Okay, great.
But you have to get it while the hair is dark. You can't get gray hairs. And unfortunately, we start getting gray hairs coming out of our face. And it's like, okay, so electrolysis is the most appropriate.
Oh.
But if they're dark, more whiskery, then the laser hair removal.
Dark hair, light skin, best combo. When people have darker complexions, it's also a little bit more tricky with the lasers because basically it's attracted to the pigment at the hair follicle.
Gotcha.
And the skin.
I don't know if I would ever make that. I think I'd just pluck them all out before I ever admitted that I had any. All right. Well, gosh, great information, both of you. Thank you so much for being with us. Really nice to have you both on.
It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And remember, if you want any additional information about perimenopause, menopause, or the things that we've talked to you about today, you can go to kp.org/Orange County or luxmedspa.net. Thank you for watching, and join us next time as we learn more about your health.